Okay, but let's get on to it. Tonight's let's talk about jobs in data analytics. Who's hiring? Who are they looking for? And again, I want to thank Beau Bristow of Concert Genetics to kind of lead us in the discussion. And I am going to have some questions. I'm sure you're going to have some questions as well. I told him this is going to be very informal. We're just trying to get information back and forth to each other. There will be plenty of time for questions. Let's see. So for the past year, and tell me if I'm wrong, Beau, for the past year or so, he's been an analytics consultant at Concert Genetics. I've known Concert Genetics for about as long as they've been around. In fact, they started as NextGXDX, and I sent interns there from the very beginning and have loved that organization for quite a while. He's also the founder of Picnic. I'll let you talk as much as you want to about what Picnic is, but also, well, I'll say it's here in front of me, a restaurant discovery and menu curation for people on special diets, gluten-free, vegetarian, vegan, food allergies, etc. I actually met Beau when he was at Healthcare Blue Book, which some of you have had some dealings with, or at least heard about some job openings, things like that. He was the VP of Innovation and Analysis, previous, I think, director of analytics. There's a long story, and I'm not going to go through all of it. Beau has been in this world for quite some time, and we're glad to have him with us. I want to reiterate one more thing before I turn it over to Beau for a little bit. I am curious to see, and I can't see everybody, but raise your hand if you're looking for a job right now. How many are looking for a job? Okay. All right. How many actually might, I'll put it in several different ways. How many are either hiring right now, have hired in the recent past, or will be hiring in the near future? Are there any of those in those categories besides Beau? Do I see any more hands that you're hiring? I still see some hands from the other. Meredith, there was a hand, I believe. Let's see, any others? I've got too many screens to go back and forth. Okay, and there's Jonathan as well. I'm glad I took the time to look to any others that I've missed. Okay, so there's at least, it sounds like at least 3 or so. I want to go to Beau and turn it over for just a second. If you could start and just tell us a little bit more about yourself, Concert Genetics, and perhaps the open role that you may have, if that is in fact still available. So Beau, yeah. Forgive me for taking a lot of your time, but go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
No, this is good. Thank you, Glenn. And you're Glenn and I know each other a little bit. We've met a couple of times, but you're putting a lot of trust in me to pull me in and have me share with the group tonight. So we do have a role at Concert Genetics. It is for an analyst, but there's quite a lot that goes into this analyst's hands. We're a small company, and initially it'll be a lot about data management, data quality, building our ETL scripts and processes. We use DBT. We're about to implement Meltano, if anyone's familiar with that. And we need someone to really own our data quality. Now, we're mostly working with claims data, so medical healthcare data, but we also have a lot of data assets that we generate ourselves. So we curate a lot of genetic testing information, which I won't get into the weeds about now, but there's a lot of data that we manage, and we need someone to really own the quality there. But beyond that, we need someone that can grow into building dashboards, doing some of our standard analyses, and then if they're hungry and want to take on more advanced things, we have no limit for a lot of things that are touching areas of R&D and new business lines that we're getting into. So there's kind of the standard stuff that has to get done, and there's some exciting stuff that would be growth opportunity. So that's a bit about the role, and I'll drop this in the chat so everyone has two things. One, here's the link to the job description, and also my email. So you're welcome to look at the job description in detail there. And you're welcome to email me directly as well, related to the job, or if there's anything else I can do to support you as a member of the data community here in Nashville. I'm happy to do that also. Glenn, I thought it might be good to fill in some of the gaps on my background too, because as we talk tonight, and I hope it's a discussion more than a monologue, it may be helpful for everyone to know where my strengths are, where my deepest experience is, and then where my gaps are. So just like any person, there are things that I've spent a lot of time working on and learning, and there's some things that I'm not going to be the best expert on, and that may help guide some of the questions here. But what are your thoughts there, Glenn?
No, that's fine. In fact, and I should have given you a little bit more. I have about 5 questions. I'm going to kind of prime the pump a little bit.
Okay.
But I would love for questions to come from others. And again, now that I've seen, let's see, Jonathan, I know Betty Ann Chakowski is in the room. I haven't seen her picture, but it's just because I have too many people here. And there's some others that I may, in some sense, put on the spot a little bit, because I want, I want us to get as much information as we can, not just to highlight your one role, but yes, I want to pull on your experience from all the different places you've been. So yes, I want them to know about your role, but we're going to pull more than that from you, if you don't mind, Beau.
Yep. Yeah, that's my goal. So the role kind of being out of the way at this point.
Okay.
A little bit about my background. So I'm actually a career changer. I think some of you are as well, from the stories that I've heard, some of the people that I've already met in this group. I was in music originally in my 20s. I toured as a singer-songwriter, and in my late 20s realized that wasn't going to be a sustainable career for me, particularly at least with my marketability as a singer-songwriter. And I started to look into other options. And at that point, so this is 2010, there weren't analytics boot camps. There weren't some of the programs that exist now. Like Vanderbilt now has a master's in data science. There's one at Lipscomb. There's the one at Belmont. There's so many programs out there now that I would have enrolled in if it were available, but it wasn't at that point. But I began to, after conversations with different people and different areas that were quantitative fields, which I've always been drawn toward quantitative things, economics and so forth. As I had conversations with people in those fields, they started to push me towards data. Data science was becoming a buzzword at that point. And so I did an MBA at Vanderbilt, but as I did that, I augmented it with some online courses. I took as many quantitative courses as I could at Vanderbilt and took anything that was related to analytics. And in doing that, was able to take a junior analytics role while I was doing my MBA, where I was working a lot with spreadsheets, but then also doing some things with Tableau, starting to do a little bit with SQL, and whenever I got the chance, a little bit of Python. And I was really just learning as I went, asking questions of the people around me, picking up books and reading things online. When I graduated with my MBA, I ended up at Healthcare Blue Book, and since then, I have always been at small companies. So Healthcare Blue Book was 25, 26 people when I joined. There were a little over 100 people when I left, but it was a young company, and I had the ability to wear a lot of hats in the analytics team there and eventually lead a division of our analytics team there at Healthcare Blue Book. I left Healthcare Blue Book to start a company that Glenn mentioned called Picnic. So I have celiac disease, which means I have to eat gluten-free. I discovered that about 5 or 6 years ago, and realized that there's a pretty big community of people with special diets or celiac disease, and finding restaurants is quite a challenge. And so I started a company to help people find restaurants if they have special diets, and to do better than what's out there right now. Some of you may have a special diet and have to use some of the tools that are out there. I launched that during COVID, or right before COVID. I left my job at Healthcare Blue Book in January of whatever it was, 2020. And then COVID hit a couple months later, and that was the worst time in the world to start a restaurant-focused app. So that was a slow grind. That app is still going, and there was a lot of data work building that, managing the data, thinking about how we take in data, and thinking beyond just scraping and machine learning, but also how do we really merge human work and interaction with some of the tools that are available to really curate and manage data. About a year and a half ago, I started doing some analytics consulting as I was basically running out of money with Picnic. And so I ended up at Concert Genetics. They had a need for someone to lead their analytics team on a fractional basis. And that was a really great fit for me because I didn't want to go full time at that point. And was able to contribute to some of their growth there and some of their direction. Concert Genetics is a small company. There are 25, 26 employees right now. And so similar to what I was experiencing in Healthcare Blue Book, it was a team that was small enough that anyone that's touching analytics is going to be touching a variety of data. You're going to be doing a lot of different things, and there's a lot of opportunity for growth. So if you see a problem, an analytics problem that needs to be solved with something that's maybe not being used at the company currently, you have the opportunity to just go and do it, figure it out as you go, which is a great thing about small companies. So that leads me to where I'm now. I am at this point pretty much full time at Concert Genetics, and will be continuing to lead their analytics team in the future. And so to recap, I have quite a bit of experience at small companies, young companies. Not as much experience in very large companies. My specialty is in healthcare analytics. So I've spent a lot of time looking at claims data, not so much pharmacy data. And the tools I've used most are going to be Python and certainly SQL. I try not to use Excel much at this point because it doesn't quite accommodate the things that we need to do. We do use a lot of Google Sheets. Sometimes it's convenient for sharing files and porting data back and forth, but I'll pause there. People may have questions about some of the gaps there, but hopefully that gives you an idea of my background and what I hopefully can bring to the table and support this group with.
Yeah, thanks, Beau. Any questions for Beau at this point?
Hi, Beau. Beth Mara, sorry.
Good.
Waving.
Hi, Beth.
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the leadership and the founder of Concert Genetics to give us a sense of the direction that they're heading.
Yeah, absolutely. So the leadership there is the company was founded by Mark Harris. He was a Vanderbilt student here in Nashville. It was founded probably 2010, maybe. Mark led the company for 5, 6, maybe 7 years. And then they brought in a new CEO, Rob Metcalf. Rob was the COO at Digital Reasoning. If anyone knows of Digital Reasoning, they were a company here in town, one of the more advanced technology companies here in Nashville for a while. And Rob was the COO there for quite a while, and then ended up has been leading Concert Genetics since I think 2016. Rob and I can the leadership team there beyond Rob are people that have been there for a long time. So I think employee number 2 is still there as their chief product officer and chief technology officer. Their chief science officer has been there for a decade. They've got a lot of people that have really invested in the company in the long run. And so the leadership team takes a long view. There are some plays that we're making right now that are profitable and fruitful in the market, but there are also some things that we're thinking about that are 10 and 20 year bets that can be very significant in healthcare. As you can tell by the name, we focus on genetics, which is a growing area of healthcare. There's a lot of testing that happens in genetics. That was what the company was founded around. But there is going to be more and more genetic, proteomic, a lot of other analyses to focus medicine. If you are familiar with the term precision medicine, that's where a lot of medicine is going, and it's going to be driven by a lot of the diagnostic tools that we help curate and manage at Concert Genetics.
Any other questions before we push on?
When you say targeted and toward like specific groups and it being like a genetics company, does that mean that you're going to be doing things with like CRISPR models tied in with like data?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we, at this point, we're not actually taking in genetic data and running analysis on genetic data. Has anyone here worked with genetic data? Curious. Okay. So a couple of people. So we're not actually looking at BAM files or CRAM files or any of the variant files that you may have worked with if you're working with genetic data. We right now focus on curating the actual testing, not the results. There is potential that at some point we would look more at the actual test results and so forth. But we're not doing some of the base pair sequencing analysis or CRISPR type things.
Beau, not that I should be talking about this, but when my students were working with NextGXDX and John Staples, some other people that were there, they were talking about that it was kind of a genetics testing marketplace. So they're trying to direct the right tests to the right audiences and those type things and put them in packages and such that made sense for the hospitals, clinics, whatever that were in use. Does that make sense?
That's right. That's right. So the company was originally founded to help manage the proliferation of genetic tests. I think at this point there are over 250,000 different genetic tests on the market that we curate, which was way too much for doctors to sort through and figure out which genetic test does my patient need. That was the original problem we're solving. That has expanded more to not just solve the problem for the providers, but also to solve problems for payers, to understand what the genetic test is that's coming through in the claims feed, because there's not 250,000 procedure codes to identify those discrete 250,000 genetic tests. So we have some machine learning algorithms that help us understand or help the payers understand what tests they're actually paying for when a test is billed. And then we actually help labs understand better how they should be coding and billing tests. So we kind of do sit in the middle as a market maker, so to speak, in healthcare, and help payers and labs and providers work together better in the area of genetic testing.
Thanks. So Beau, I want to ask a much more generic, not genetic, but generic question that may be helpful for all. I'm looking and simple as well. So you've been in multiple roles at multiple places, a lot of healthcare related and leader in analytics. I'm wondering, again, just a basic question. What have you learned about what makes for a good analyst? Is that it's very vague. You can take that where you want it. What are some of the characteristics, whether it's tech or more communicative? What are you looking for in a data analyst?
Yeah, the thing that I think about consistently, and I've mentioned this to several people at different teams where I've been involved in the hiring process, is that curiosity is a fundamental personality trait. So there's some people that they are just more inclined to see a number on a page that doesn't make sense and be like, I've got to figure out why that number is what it is. I was expecting a 2 and it ends up being a 20. Like what's going on there? And that to me is critical for a good analyst, because you're consistently going to come across surprises in the data. And if you're not driven at 4:30 in the afternoon when you're tired, it's been a long day, to go figure out why is that number not what I expected, then errors are going to propagate, you're going to miss things, and you're going to miss out on learning opportunities to bring insights to the team. So I really place a high premium on curiosity. That's one example or one use case. But the other thing is that the technology is constantly changing. And just like with developers, no one remembers all the solutions. No one is a dictionary. We all have to Google and have to find answers. And someone that's curious is much more likely to go to find their own answers. They're going to find new tools. They're going to find new methods of solving problems, and they're going to be a little more self-driven as an analyst if they're highly curious. So that's a fundamental thing, and it's not. in terms of testing or assessing that, I tend to look at what do people consume in terms of content, or how did they learn to be an analyst? Were they self-driven? Were they an autodidact and they went and they signed up for classes online, or they pushed themselves through something that where they didn't have someone breathing over their shoulder saying you got to go get a degree. Do they read content that is interesting? I guess we all have things that we're interested in, but are they looking for complex topics that they're like, oh, I want to know more about this? Like that is typically a good indicator of someone that's curious. I'll stop there.
I wonder, I think there are some other folks in the audience that also you raised, or Jonathan is one, Meredith perhaps. Are there others that want to add to this? Same question. Those of you, not that are hunting for jobs right now, but might have some insight on what you're looking for when you're looking for a data analyst.
Yeah, I'll speak, I guess.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, pretty much what Beau said, curiosity, but also just it's almost like the investigative mindset, right? Because a lot of times you run a SQL query or you have data that you rolled up and you've duplicated it, 4 times what you're supposed to have, and the ability to figure out why and where you went wrong, and just the mindset that, okay, I need to figure out what, to break that problem down into smaller pieces and be able to pinpoint where I made my mistake. Because I can't do it. Maybe somebody in here can, but I can't just read my SQL query and go, that's the one place I made the mistake that, duplicated my data. So it's good to be able to break it down and figure out, piece by piece, where you went wrong, why you went wrong. Is it something in your query? Is it something you didn't understand about the process that generated the data? So really just being able to take a piece or a mistake and figure out piece by piece what generated that mistake. Is it bad data? Is it your mistake? Is it a query? Is it a report? Just so it goes along with the curiosity, but really just the investigative mindset of where did I go wrong? Why? How do I get to the answers? And who do I need to ask? Who do I need to communicate with? If it's a data problem, who do I ask? How the data was generated? How do I figure that piece out? So just really just that investigative mindset.
Perfect. We've actually had at least 2 other hands have raised. I called on Meredith earlier. What do you have to offer, Meredith?
So for our particular context, one of the things that we need is somebody who has some subject matter expertise as well, or at least experience, or at least I just mean a general knowledge. They don't have to be an expert at it, but man, if they just have the technical skills and don't actually know anything about health or public health, then they aren't going to be able to support people. And the particular role that we were recently hiring for was somebody who is going to be able to, we needed them to be able to work with people throughout the agency. They were going to be kind of like a consultant working with different groups. So we really needed them to have strong people skills, both being able to ask good questions, as well as to be able to speak in terms that everybody could understand. So to be able to take technical concepts and describe them more simply for whoever they were going to be working with. Those were a couple of skills that we were looking for.
Great. All good input. Betty Ann.
Yeah, hi. I was going to say some things very similar to what Meredith just said, which is the idea of subject matter expertise. When I talk to people and they say, oh, I want to work in data, I almost always say, but in what field? And because I find that as someone sort of picks a field, if it's, I don't know, sports or healthcare or some kind of civic engagement, if they stay in that area and they start to accumulate subject matter expertise, that makes you someone looking for a job much more desirable, because that takes a long time to gather, is that subject matter expertise. And again, like what Meredith was saying, was that whether or not someone can speak to others in English, not being so technical. I have to admit that when I interview people, I rarely ask technical questions. I really just want to get the sense of how do they think? How do they solve problems? how do they react when things aren't going smoothly? Things like just how quote unquote teachable somebody is. Are they open to hearing new ideas? Are they open to being mentored? And I also tell people a lot that the best thing, at least that I do when I'm being interviewed, is to literally be myself, because I can't pretend. And if I get a job and I have to pretend that I'm an expert or something, that's just never going to work. It's going to make me miserable. So those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, thanks to everyone. Any others? Were there other hands that I missed? I want to, I agree, and I'm going to play devil's advocate just a little bit. So if I come in and I say, I'm a curious person, I'm persistent, but I have no technical skills, you know, I'm wondering, so are there a list of essential technical skills that you must have that you are wanting to layer this curiosity and investigative role and analytical mind? What are the basics? Several of these people have gone through the software school, through 4-year or masters or PhDs. What is it that they need to bring besides those things? And I know these are terribly important. Beau, I see you nodding your head, but can you go to that a little bit, and would love others' impressions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what I typically see out there in other job postings are, SQL, Excel as a fundamental. So you need to be able to navigate a spreadsheet and write SQL queries. I really, I think the points that were just brought up about subject matter expertise were really good. And one caveat with all this is that unique roles are going to require trade-offs. You're going to look for someone with maybe more subject matter expertise. You're willing to trade off a little bit of technical expertise because the subject matter expertise is more valuable, or so forth. In the role we're currently hiring, I want somebody who has experience with medical claims, because they're on the front lines, consuming those, getting those transformed. They're going to be handling missing values and some of the messy stuff that happens in medical claims. If they haven't seen that before, then it's going to take a while to get them up to speed and help them understand what they should expect when they get a claims feed. But coming back to your question about specific technical things, SQL is going to be core for that, because whatever database we're working in, we're going to be able to access it with SQL. I really like to see Python experience, particularly with pandas. That a little bit it's a bias of mine, because that's what I've used the most. I mean, there are a lot of people that can do great things with R and some other things, but Python just has so many opportunities, not just for analytics, but also putting some things in production, for wrangling data and so forth, that I really, if someone doesn't already have a lot of experience with Python, I'd love to see that they're already experimenting with it and are curious and trying to learn it. As I'm thinking about career progression on my team, 2 years, 4 years out, I want them to be able to work with data in Python.
Other voices, some that we've heard or others that we haven't.
Yeah, I'll jump back in. So again, working in public health, really SQL and Excel are foundational, but then, there are quite a few people who've gotten hired. So honestly, there are people who are serving as analysts who just know Excel. That's it. They don't even know SQL. And then kind of the next level up is having a data visualization tool, either Tableau or Power BI. And a lot of our analysts, that's all they know. But if we want to take another step up, for us, it would be R or SAS. We're trying to introduce Python a little bit more. So again, I work in training, and so we're trying to make that shift a little bit. But mostly it's R and SAS as what we do analysis with.
Great.
But again, I just want to be really clear, like, you don't have to know it all. Like, it's easy to get overwhelmed that there are all these different tools, and there are positions out there where if you just know Excel really well, it is possible to get that kind of position.
And speaking, and Dane, I'm coming to you in just a second, but Beau, I'll ask you, and I think at Healthcare Blue Book for a good while, I know that the data analysts were spending a lot of time in Excel. Is that correct? And I'm not sure the status right now, but yeah, what do you?
Yeah, that's right. So there, we had a couple different teams at Healthcare Blue Book. One team did use a lot of Excel, and they built a lot of great processes in Excel. My team, we used a hybrid of Python and Excel. So we did a lot of data manipulation and pre-processing with Python, and then we would do some things in Excel and then go back and forth. It was kind of an interesting process, but that was the state of it when I left there. We had improved on something that used to take a week and brought it down to half a day, or at the max a day, using some of those tools. I do think it's worth calling out too that, like, within, we mentioned Python or we mentioned SQL, but there's a broad spectrum to what that means. So it's one thing to be able to do a select star in SQL. It's a different thing to be able to create a stored procedure that loops through something that's in a table and does some sort of process. And there are different levels of that, and some of those may be necessary, some of them not as much. In the roles I've been in, because we're small teams, being a kind of a utility player or more of a Swiss Army knife has been very valuable. So if someone can write a stored procedure, that's more valuable to me than being able to really optimize a database and make it run absolutely as fast as it could. So whatever the query or process may be.
Dane, yeah, don't let me forget you.
Hey, yeah, I'm a data analyst for a small oil and gas downstream refining company. So we have like niche needs. Like we're in a niche industry and we're niche on top of that. So like I really look for a lot of people who have good data visualization and presentation skills. My team, we cover the whole world, Asia, Europe, Africa. So we deal a lot with people who are ESL, English is their second language. I deal with a lot of engineers. They're all really smart people and they love to go drill down in the nitty gritty, but you really have to be able to take that high level overview, because I'm talking about things that last 4 or 5 years, and who cares about 2 days?
Yeah. Other comments at all? Let's see. Yeah, so this is a little bit different. I've been using the word cautious quite a lot, and that's and some of you have heard me say this, and forgive me for the repetition. The business world seems cautious right now. It's like even those that this year they plan to hire, they may plan to hire 1 or 10, and they even sometimes put it out there. It's on Indeed or it's on LinkedIn. But everyone, from what I've seen, and I think what many of you are experiencing, yes, we want the role, but we're going to slow walk this a bit. And maybe it's going to be in a month, or maybe it's going to be in 6 months. We still want this, but we're just not pulling the trigger right now. And so I want to ask those that have spoken about one of the things that the other thing that comes up that I think has to do with this is a lot of people are putting out lots of resumes. And so first of all, let me just ask that. Is that what you're seeing, Beau? It's like, is that the experience? Concert Genetics. I don't know if you decided yesterday that you want to hire this role and now you're putting it out there and you're going to do it. If you are, you're exceptional and atypical. What are you seeing out in the world as far as, are there people that are actually hiring? I know there are some. Yeah, speak to that if you don't mind, Beau.
As far as other companies that are hiring, I can't speak to that as much as I can speak to what our mentality has been inside the company. We actually were considering a slightly more advanced analytics role earlier this year, and we decided to postpone that for a while and make do with the resources we had. We realized that, hey, we can probably create some efficiencies by automating a few things in our analytics team, or just dropping some things that we were doing that weren't actually as valuable as they thought they were maybe 6 months or a year ago. And then the role that we have open now actually was precipitated because of a team member that that moved on to another company. So she moved to a new role, and this role, and we were sad to lose her, but this role also gives us a chance to rethink a new position on our team, and it's an exciting chance to recraft what we could be, the person that we could have as a teammate, and taking on maybe some things that our former colleague wasn't doing or didn't have skill sets for. So this wasn't a net addition; it was really a replacement, but maybe with a slightly different skill set. If that helps. And we thought about it for a while before pulling the trigger to make the hire, and we just posted the job last week.
Okay. Part of what I'm speaking to is I think some of you, maybe even quite a few of you, are having a hard time. You know, you've come out of the software school or graduated, or you're making a transition from another job, and there are not people standing in line. And part of what I'm speaking to is not at all wanting to sugarcoat it. Right now seems to be harder than some other times. There's never an easy time to find a job when you don't have one, but now seems to be a bit difficult, although anecdotally at least, people are starting to show interest. It was good to hear from Concert Genetics. I heard from HSG and some Huron is starting. So there are some people that seem to be maybe, okay, maybe now's the time. But more than anything, I'm trying to show some comfort that it's not just you. I think the economy, people are kind of waiting and seeing and so part of, I really don't want just to talk. I'd love to hear those of you that are working on a team. What's the conversation? Are your managers looking toward that next hire? Is there any of that conversation going on? Does anybody have anything to add there?
Yeah, I'll add our current
Thanks.
situation. So I guess I should introduce myself a little bit.
Thanks.
My name is Jonathan. I work at a decently small company. I guess we've probably mid-sized company at this point. I don't know the exact definitions, but it's a company called Wire Masters. We're actually located about 45 miles south of Nashville in a town called Columbia, Tennessee, which is where I grew up. So we're a distributor of wire and cable, marketed towards like commercial and defense, military and defense, aerospace industry. So we serve customers like Lockheed and Boeing and things like that. So we're basically just a middleman for, between manufacturers of wire and cable and, consumers of wire and cable. So we're kind of at the point, I was the first data hire 4 years ago, I guess. And we're starting to, the workload has overcome what I can personally handle. So we've started to expand kind of our data team, and we're starting to move towards, I guess, the analytics hub type model that a lot of companies are going to, or where we have a core data team of, right now would be probably 1 or 2 people, myself and another hire we have. But we're starting to kind of look for individual analysts in our departments, our sales department, our operations department, our quality department, finance department, that can come in with technical skills. And because we're a family owned business, we're still privately owned, and so most of the people that work at our headquarters grew up together, know each other, so they're not necessarily the most technically minded people. We're not like it's a small town, so not, don't have great technical skills. We have salespeople that can't add 2 numbers together in Excel. So we have we're trying to find more technically minded people to kind of sit in those departments, and be like the analyst that helps create reporting and Excel, things for the individual departments, so that when requests come in, each department has immediate access to an analyst. So we're still early on in that phase, but right now, I had a meeting with our CEO, I don't know, last week, and he said, go find more people like you and hire them. So there's definitely support from leadership. We have our own software development team in-house. So we have about 4 developers right now. Well, 7, because we have 3 in Germany, 4 in America. So that team's about to grow because we're about to take on some e-commerce platform development. And so that'll be expansion of data as well, most likely, depending on how we structure it. But so we're constantly churning out more features in our ERP system from our development team that has a backlog always. And so every time they add a feature, right, now you have a new dashboard or data request to track that new feature. So we are growing quickly, and we have a hard time finding technically minded analytical individuals because we're in a small town. So that's kind of the state we're in right now. Is we don't have any official open roles, but my CEO is posting, like, once a month that we're hiring developers, analysts, and stuff, just throwing it out there, trying to get, because we don't have a lot of traction because we're a small company and kind of a small unknown industry. It's not like people are flooding our doors trying to work for us, so he's always reaching out, trying to connect with people. So I'll put my LinkedIn in the chat, but we're definitely open to conversations. And like I said, no official roles right now, but if we find the right people, we want to put Excel and Tableau in their hands. I can tell you a little bit about our data infrastructure. So we just recently migrated all of our data to Snowflake. So we have Snowflake. dbt is what I've been building our data warehouse out in. And Tableau is our primary BI tool of choice. We're always looking to see if we need to replace that. Speaking of the Sigma, I know I have a meeting with them Friday, hopefully to learn more about them, because what I've learned is our end users don't necessarily use the visualizations. They want a table they can download and play with the data themselves. So we're always looking towards different BI solutions, and we have a lot of support from management and ownership. I can tell you, my time being here, everything I've asked for, I've gotten, which is very interesting place to be. I brought Tableau in. I asked for Snowflake. I asked for dbt. I've asked for all sorts of things to help us make us better from a data perspective, and I've never been told no, which is nice. I guess I should take that for granted a lot.
You
I
should
think.
never leave this job.
I know. I do take that for granted quite a bit. So we're, like I said, no official roles, but we're always looking for technically minded people that can help us. We don't really use our data all that well because we have very few people that actually understand data and what to do with it. So still a growing company, still expanding. So.
Well, no, thanks, Jonathan. One quick question: is it on site or remote or hybrid?
So right now,
I know there's no open roles, but if it were,
I think we're starting to get more comfortable with remote, for the right people, obviously, and especially if you were in the Nashville area, for sure wouldn't be bad. But we've started to hire more and more people that are completely remote workers, and especially from a technology standpoint, if you have tech skills, you're more likely to be able to work remotely. But it's a conversation we are willing to have, and we have a lot of remote workers now. We do have a core of people that still come into the office. Like, I go into the office, every day, but I also live 4 minutes from my office, so it's not like a commute or anything. And so I go in and sit with the two guys that currently work for me.
Right.
So I think remote or hybrid would be a potential for sure. It's just we're always open to discussing those kind of things.
All right, thanks. Dane, another point. Yes.
And I said this earlier, but downstream refining took a big hit during COVID. People weren't driving as much, you weren't flying as much, you weren't using as much gas or jet fuel. But now things are crazy. So refineries and their adjacent vendors are all hiring because they laid a bunch of people off, and now they just can't find anyone.
All right, interesting. So is that true with your firm as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking to hire 1 or 2 people this year. We're just finalizing that now. And we weren't looking for years from that.
Great. Okay. Betty Ann and then Roberto. Betty Ann?
Go ahead, Roberto. Why don't you go? I know we're getting toward the end of our hour, so go ahead.
Roberto?
Sorry, quick comment. To the person, Jonathan Adams, I kind of completely agree with him. Like, we, even in Parallon, during from like 2016 to now, we ended up making a bunch of dashboards for a bunch of different customers. But at the end of the day, the first question they ask isn't how do I work it, is how do I download it as an Excel sheet? It's sad, but if you know how to make a dashboard and you know also how to work with Excel, that's about 50% of the job. And then the other 50 is going to be SQL as an analyst. From there you can move on, but as long as you have like those three skills, mainly SQL, a good amount of Excel, and at least one data visualization, you're pretty good to go. Like you're in a good spot.
Yes, Betty Ann, still have a comment?
Yeah, sure. Just kind of riffing on your question about are people hiring? So I just started a new job a week ago.
Congratulations,
And
yes.
thank you. Thank you. And they hired yet another person who starts next week. So, but this is a large company. It's a pharmaceutical company, and I'm involved with drug discovery as a machine learner, if you will. And so my observations have been that large companies are considering hiring. Smaller companies a little harder because they have limited budgets. And if they can find sort of what's already been mentioned here, like a jack of all trades, somebody who has a bunch of skills or has the drive to juggle many, many things, I think companies are open to that. The other thing I noticed during my job search was there were a lot of companies on the West Coast of, California all the time. But I was specifically staying away from smaller companies like startups because they seem to be the most careful with their money right now, because I think investors are not investing. But large companies in California seem to be really, really sweet, like lots of job openings.
No, thanks so much. And Betty Ann brought this up. I have a scheduled from 5:30 to 7, but I'll be honest, very transparent. I told my wife on my way up to the closet here to lead this thing is that I wouldn't mind if we, I think 6:30 to 7 is anybody that wants to hang around and has other questions and things along this line. But we don't have a hard stop at 6:30. I do have it in there, but I also know I don't want to push your patience too long. I do want to do what I said I was, and we haven't yet. We said kind of listen for a while if you're looking for a job. Are there, let's open up the door. Does anybody have questions for some of those who've been speaking, myself or Beau or Betty Ann, Meredith? What questions did you bring tonight, and what have we not covered? We haven't covered, there's a lot of things I know, but what questions do you have?
I have one.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, hello. My name's Chima, by the way. Sorry, I just got off of work, so I had to hop into the car.
No, I do so many Zoom calls in the car, so glad to have you.
Yeah, but my question is, I would like to know, what are you expecting from the portfolio websites? And when you see your portfolio websites, what type of projects are you looking for? And what type of skills do you want us to focus on while we're making our resumes, or while we have our resumes already?
Before you get an answer, can I ask your background? Are you finishing up a boot camp? What's your preparation, Chima?
Well, I've completed the Google certification for data analytics, and I've done Udemy, and yeah, Python, SQL, Excel, Tableau, Power BI.
Okay, now throw it open. Sorry, I keep picking on you, Beau. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's I have not used, I assume that like a GitHub account or something like that would be an example. I have typically not looked at those things or put a lot of weight on them because I don't know how much someone has done on their own and what problems they've solved on their own to produce whatever solution I'm looking at. What I typically do is after some screening calls and a deeper relationship with a candidate, I'll ask them to do an analytics project. So we try to make it very simple, so they're not spending a whole weekend doing some sort of analytics project. Just, just a couple of hours. But I want to see them work with data and solve a problem, and then discuss it with me. And this goes back to a comment that was made earlier. I want to see how they think about that problem, how they solve the problem. I'm also looking at like, how much were they able to, how far were they able to run on their own with whatever the instruction set was that I gave? Can they work independently? Did they have a lot of questions? And that's a double-edged sword. Did they ask a question that really needed to be asked, or did they ask questions of me that they could have found on Google? Like those are all kind of parts of that project, which helped me to see more than the portfolio. So I that's not maybe the answer you were looking for, but that's the way I have approached it historically when I'm really trying to see someone's technical ability and thought process. I'm not looking at a portfolio.
So I have an answer. I'm not sure. So different people expect different things is the first thing. What I would encourage is that whatever you have in that portfolio leads to a story that you can tell. In other words, you need to whatever is there, and I'm going to overstate this. It doesn't matter what's there in some sense, but whatever is there, you need to be able to tell what you learned from it, your process in working through it. It doesn't even need to be finished. This was an interesting project that I just had to work on. And this is what I learned. This was what was hard, and I got stuck and I wasn't able to go any further here. And it maybe is even an opportunity. I got stuck here, but I reached out to Beau or Betty Ann, and they helped me get over that. It's a place for a story. And I think there will be some, and again, correct me if I'm wrong for all of those who are actually in the industry, but from what I've learned over the years, they want to know, a lot of people do want to see that you have a GitHub account. And so if it's populated, that's a good first thing. And they will say, oh, they can use GitHub to a certain extent. But then beyond that, it just gives you an opportunity to tell a story during an interview. Beau, Betty Ann, Dane, what are your thoughts there? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, sure. I'll comment. I agree with you, Glenn, especially about the story. So if someone has a GitHub account with just a bunch of code in it, and I can't tell, like, is there a beginning? Is there an end? Was there anything in here? Then I just think, okay, this was just like a big old coding exercise, which is good, actually. I mean, it's showing that, as Glenn said, this person knows how to use GitHub, this person knows how to code in whatever language. But it makes a bigger impression if you can sort of say, this is the story in a way that says, I took this thing from the start and got this far. So it just shows that a person can do something independently. So I agree with Glenn totally.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So as someone that is kind of like very, very early on, I mean, I just started, school 2 months ago. When there are avenues within, or the kind of the overarching thing of data analysis where you can pursue being a data scientist or an architect or an engineer, what are the differentiating factors between those that for someone like me is helpful to keep in mind, that the factors that might draw me to one over the other? How does that kind of look to those people that have been in the industry for a bit and know a little bit more about those things?
Anyone?
Well, I have a kind of a short answer that's going to sound snarky, but I don't mean it to be. But most people actually don't know the difference, among those three kind of broad topics or, categories of data savvy people. So how would you possibly know if they don't know? So that's kind of the snarky answer, but I think the real answer really has a lot to do with, as you start to do projects, if you find yourself drawn more to, say, cleaning up the data and understanding the data, then data analyst might be exactly what you're into. But
Yeah,
if you're thinking about how does this data flow in a way that, I don't know, can I automate it? Well, then maybe data engineering is more what you're into. So I think you should kind of try to pay attention to what parts draw you, that you get the most enjoyment at, that you find fun and you're good at, and then try to see, oh, does this point me toward one of these specialties more than the other? But I can assure you, most people actually don't know the difference. I have found that job titles are now close to meaningless.
Oh, great.
Right, I know that, I know that's not really positive, but it's true. So, and again, as I said, I just finished a job search and I consider myself a data scientist, but I searched not just on that title, but on lots of other things as well.
The other qualifier, I think, Betty, and I've just heard you several times, actually, even to my class, it's like, if you don't enjoy programming, if you don't just love
Yeah.
the code,
Yeah, yeah,
then you
Yeah, very
shouldn't be
much.
a data scientist.
yes, true. I can't tell you the number of people who've said they want to do something like this, but they hate coding. And it's
Okay.
it's just torturous. And I don't want to discourage anybody, but I don't want anybody to be unhappy either.
Dane, you had your question, your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I work for a really small shop. We're 45 employees, and this is down from guys who work at a manufacturing up to the CEO level. There's 5 people on my team. Like we're not large, so like our expectation is for everyone to be able to do a little bit of everything. I mean, the data sets I deal with, they're not massive, they're not crazy complicated, but if you can't do some modeling, you can't do some analysis, you can't mess with storing and automating a data flow, like we're just really not that interested. It's just how it works at the end of the day. We don't need an expert in everything. We need people who can do a bit of it all.
And if I could piggyback on your comment, Dane, I think that has a lot to do with whether or not you're talking to someone who is in a small company that's sort of like lean and mean, or if you're in like a massive company where they are totally happy with someone who has limited skill set. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just, early on in their career and they're looking to grow. That's also an enviable person to work with, but it has to fit the company. If the company is small, they don't have that luxury. So I think that's part of what I had to look at while I was looking for my next position was, did I want to be with a large company or a small company?
Yeah, I guess my differentiators always kind of been, how comfortable are you with uncertainty? If you're comfortable with uncertainty and okay that you may not have like the exact answer and you enjoy that investigative process, analytics data science route is probably more for you. If you're not very comfortable with uncertainty and you like things to work and you're like more of a building mindset and you enjoy writing code or writing a SQL query or writing a stored procedure or DBT code, and your table is there and all the data flows the way you like it, and at the end of the day you can say, I made this table, all the numbers make sense, I can check them, and things like that, like data engineering, data architect, things like that are probably more for you. And also, are you more of a people person? Data analytics and data science are going to be very involved with people. I've always tell people I have a boss, but I'm everyone's, like I work for everyone at our company. It doesn't matter what, being the only data analyst is a very people-oriented role. I get requests from literally every department head, every manager. So I have to be able to work with people and respond to different types of people and requests versus data engineering. You're going to be more back-end, you're going to be working with technical people. Data architect, you're going to be working with a little bit more technical people, but the analytics, data science can be very oriented towards business people and kind of almost translating data to business people and making sure they understand the outcomes and making sure they're involved in the process, because they're not going to trust your data if they weren't involved in how the data was, taken in, what the reporting structure was. If they didn't have any involvement in that, it's hard to be a data analyst, data scientist without being able to interact with a business user and talk to them and understand what questions they're even wanting to ask or answers they're looking for. And again, you have to be kind of comfortable with uncertainty, because even data science is probabilistic, right? It's not a deterministic answer for a lot of them. Is 90% good enough on a model? Is 85% good enough on a model? What are you trying to do? So if you're not satisfied by, like, I did, I have metrics that I calculated towards, and I got the best model with my metrics, and it works in production. If you're not satisfied with that, like, lingering percentage, you're never going to be 100% correct. Whereas data engineering, data architecting is more of like a certainty. You do data flows, you build your data pipelines, you do whatever. You have the table, you can check the table, you get an alert if your pipeline went wrong, and you fix it, and now it works again. So it's almost like a builder versus like investigative mindset.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was thinking. It's the difference in an engineer and a scientist, or that analysis kind of in the middle, but the engineering, everything works. Scientists, not so much. We are going to have to, there's another question I want to bring up that I think may be on minds. Anyway, I'm just trying to, so besides specific skills, and whether that's technical or intangibles, the communication, what makes, this is just a basic, so what makes the difference on paper, on the resume, or in how you encounter a prospective candidate as to whether or not you decide to proceed with an interview? Some of those things we've gone over, but I'm curious. I know a lot of people are putting out resumes, and so yeah, makes the difference? I see this resume, I see this one came from Indeed, this came from a referral. How do you decide who you're going to talk to? Again, Beau, you're nodding your head. That's a dangerous thing because I count on you. So what's up?
Yes, it's other people that have been in hiring positions can augment this, but when I always feel overwhelmed when I post a job and I've got people just constantly sending me messages or sending me resumes, and so and it sounds terrible, but I'm looking for a reason to say no and just move it out of my field of view so I can focus on the people that are really going to be a good fit. So yeah, I know. So in some sense, you're trying to look and try not to give people a reason to say no. And that means, just some basic, grammar and so forth. But the things that warm me up to a resume or an email, one, if it comes from a friend or an acquaintance, or if they reference a common person, and there's a security in relationships. And as a hiring person, I am taking a risk. If I hire someone, I'm risking the time it takes to train them, the time it takes to bring them into our culture. And it's a big cost if they end up being the wrong person. You have to go back to the drawing board. If you have to let somebody go, so I don't want to do that. No hiring manager wants to do that. And if someone's in your network or connected in some way relationally, that just feels safer. So for better or worse, if you have a common connection, reference that. The other thing, I was thinking about this earlier with two of the questions that come up. One is if you can help tell me your story of where you want to go, that actually is pretty meaningful to me. Like if for instance, we're in healthcare, and if you come to me with a story about how you love healthcare, even if you're not in healthcare currently, but you can help me connect the dots with why you will love some of the work that you're doing at Concert Genetics, that's really meaningful to me and helps the resume or the letter stand out. If you can connect those dots and why you love healthcare or something specific about this job. And then the other thing is what really differentiates you. And this is tough. We just talked about some of the core skills, like you got Excel, you got your SQL, maybe there's a data visualization tool in there. Maybe you'll sprinkle a little Python. So many people out there have those things. I'm really curious, what is it about you that's unique? And like, for example, when this was really tough for me because I was a musician. And when I transitioned to a quantitative field or going into analytics from being a musician, what's the connection there? I mean, that's a really hard thing to put on a resume. Like, hey, I was just playing a guitar and now suddenly I want to come work with your data and help you make important decisions. But if I could help tell the story of how I had to make decisions in my own business. I was a self-employed singer-songwriter, and how I had worked my way into data and realized that I was really excited about certain elements there. Like the nuances that made me, I don't know, stand out as a person or that were unique to me, even if they in some light maybe looked like detractors, if I could frame those as things that made me maybe a better fit for a specific role. For me, it was a small company. And I could say, hey, I was kind of an entrepreneur as a singer-songwriter in my 20s. You're a small company. You need someone with an entrepreneurial mindset. That's why you would want me as opposed to another analyst, I guess, to cut to the chase. So anything you have like that you can say to differentiate yourself is valuable. I'll stop there. I didn't mean to talk that long.
No, that's great. Any others? I will say, and again, I think there were like 34 people that haven't been to Data Nerds before, so I can repeat myself, at least for some of you. One thing, and Sam and I had this conversation today, it's like everybody I'll back up. I would encourage you to keep answering posts, Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever you use. But I think at least as importantly, I feel like it's more importantly, you should tell everyone that you know, at least, what you're trying to do, what you want to do, where you want to go. It's kind of Beau's idea about the path you're on. At least tell the people that care about you already, because you never know where that connection is going to come from. Pushing that a little further, that's what LinkedIn and things are about. That's what the meetups are about. You're trying to build a network, because unless you are in a very different place than most, you're going to find your next job through some kind of connection. I know, so Beau may hire somebody that he's never met, but it's a perfect person comes through Indeed or LinkedIn. But most likely it's that connection that introduces, and you just need to have more of those connections. And so, yeah, do everything you can. One of the things, and I'm talking too much, Meredith, I do see your hand, I'll get there, is that use everybody you know. Also, if you're connected with them on LinkedIn, then you are only 2 connections away from all of their connections. And so I try to encourage people to look through my connections, do a search for data analyst, find somebody that's doing what you want to do. Don't be obnoxious, but reach out and say, can I have 10 minutes of your time? I'd love to hear your story. So show some interest in them, some care in them, some genuine interest and care, but let them tell you their story. And if you hit it off, say, who else can you introduce me to? You just need to build that network. It's part of the job search. Meredith, forgive me for rambling on.
Oh, and this is great stuff. So one of the things that I've been really surprised by working as a hiring manager is just how many resumes are poorly formatted, there are misspellings. Just make it look nice as a starting place, and that will get half of the people out of the way, and put you ahead of half of the people who've applied. Nice. Then also, in addition to GitHub, I look for what else I can find about people online. If I'll just do a search for somebody's name. And first off, I love it if you have a video, because if I can get a sense of who you are and, be able to do it in the comfort of just watching at first, rather than having a conversation at first, it's nice to get a sense of your personality with a video. And then also, but also be careful about what else is out there on the internet about you. So, just Google yourself and make sure that what's out there is stuff that you want to have out there, which might mean taking down old videos or, that sort of thing.
Thanks. Dane, I think I saw another hand. Yes.
Yeah. My company, 90% of the people hired above a certain level have been internal referrals. So I just want to echo what other people said, like, you're your own advocate there. So always talk to people about it. I'm really bad at it, despite what you might think on this call. But you are your own advocate. And then more importantly, people are always willing to help. I've been shocked. You know, I hate to say I scratch your back, you scratch my back. It's kind of mentality, but everyone's been helped. Everyone's helped someone. Most people, unless you're a horrendous person, aren't going to be like, no, I can't help you. And if they are, just say, okay, thanks, and just move on with your life. I mean, not everyone's going to like you at the end of the day, but you just have to reach out. I've been shocked the amount of people who have helped me find someone or who have helped me out. Like, I don't understand this problem. Can you help me? It's just how the world turns.
Yes, for sure. We're winding down. I think we are. I'm kind of using all your attention that I've been able to. I just so much appreciate you being here. We do want to be helpful. One thing I want to push. So several of you have put things on chat that you're trying to share. I will do my best to consolidate that and share it with the participants. I'll mail it. It may take me a day or two, but I'll push that out. If anybody wants to, add their email or LinkedIn, go ahead and do that. If remember that I'm not going to share it with the world, but I'll share it with those that RSVP'd for the evening event. Does that make sense? The other thing I would encourage you is that I think it was Monday. I spent a lot of time on Monday. I reached out to quite a few people that had RSVP'd and tried to connect on LinkedIn and sent you a short message or something. It's much easier. It's much easier for me. If you will contact me, try to connect on LinkedIn, it's easier for you to do that. And then I will reach back out. I can't do that with the 80 people that signed up, but I would love to I can easily say I'll connect. And then if you have an interest in talking, whether it's Zoom or even meeting in a coffee shop, coming to breakfast at Data Nerds, I would love to connect. And we'll see what we can do. Thanks so much, Beau. I definitely put you on the spot and you have just shined, for the last hour plus. And so I appreciate that. Betty Ann, Meredith, I'm not going to say Dane, Jonathan, thanks so much for being a part of this. I do apologize that everyone didn't have the chance to talk, but keep coming back and we'd love to have a conversation. And Beth, you mentioned earlier, I am excited about this. I love being the leader of Data Nerds. It's kind of all about me, as long as I'm being fed by this, I'll keep doing it. And so you guys are doing a good job at that. I keep mentioning Sam, forgive me, Sam. This morning I was talking about, I would also love to, if you have some team members, I'd love to know more about your company. If there's somebody else there, particularly I have this roundtable for directors of data science, but anybody that's looking for, I reached out to Beau and he came. There was a lot of people that didn't. I would love to know particularly if your business is hiring, because there's 2,200 data nerds. Many of you guys are looking for jobs. That's why they're on Meetup. And so if I can share those things, I would love to. So have your companies reach out and we'll see what we can do together. Thanks for putting up with my rambling. It's been a great evening. This, I think, is the largest that we've had. We had 61 that showed up on Zoom. We've had 61 Zoom and in person combined, but this is the largest we've had on Zoom. And for whatever that means, I appreciate it. So keep coming back and we'll get to know each other a bit. Any last comments?
I do. I have a last comment. Glenn, I really want to thank you for this forum. And I have to say, this was one of the richest conversations I've had in a long, long time. I mean, I think pretty much every contribution from every person was spot on in one way or another. So thank you, Glenn. And thank you for everyone who contributed. This was great.
You're very kind. I would echo that. It's been a great conversation, a good way to spend an evening. Good night. All right. And we'll see you soon. Take care of yourself.